Welcome back to another Dalten Collective Hangout. So this week we were going to try to have some presentation / working on that trust metric one more time with Phonics. I spoke with her earlier today, and we walked through some of the academic literature, the functions, and she was actually going to try to write it in Haskell, recreate some of those functions in Haskell. She's a bit more familiar with that, but unfortunately she got a little bit delayed and couldn't make the meeting, so we don't have anything to show for today, but hopefully within the next day or two, and if not, and I'll make sure to get some time with her and maybe get something on record on a recording that we can share out for people on work on this. And just as a reminder for anybody watching, trust metric is that thing that we're trying to see if we can port into Hoon to do some sort of basic reputation management. And what that reputation would be is sort of like a sliding scale of something either like expertise or trust or some other singular metric that we can score, where people start at something like 0. You're part of the group in the sense that you can see what's going on and maybe participate. Then you would grow into that next level where there would be some sort of participation that already had happened and recognition of that effort. The next step, step 3, would be like full membership into the group. And then finally would be like mastery or elder status or something like that, where we'd have 4 basic ideas about what membership is, and we could use this metric to measure that. And specifically, we would measure that by people grading or attesting to somebody else's level. So Raps, if I would consider you an expert in Dalten Collective, and if that reciprocated, then we would both be experts if that was the size of the network. So we don't have to worry too much about like Sybil attacks or accounts that are being spun up where we don't have any idea who they are and they just keep coming and coming, because that's nice, because we don't have that problem generally in Urbit because of Urbit IDs. So that's one thing we don't have to sort of account for, though this metric can sort of also prevent some of those things, even though it's not perfect. And if we can get a working implementation that's maybe useful for other groups inside Urbit, possibly also something we could pay for. So Raps, if I see you're back, do you want to give your quick update before you have to leave again?
Yeah, LegalZoom just called me and hung up when I answered, so that's gone well.
Another 2.5 hours waiting on hold, right?
Right. Yeah, that's very frustrating. Hopefully they'll try and call me back. Basically, we are on hold with the state of Delaware in trying to incorporate, and it's hard for me to parse out why, particularly because LegalZoom, not us, is a little bit hard to get a hold of. So I'm going to try and catch them again later today. We'll see how that goes. I think probably we're on the name check phase, and I strongly suspect that it has to do with the SIG. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. Yeah. And if it is, I'm perfectly okay just dropping the SIG.
I don't know, man. Palfin kind of convinced me. Maybe we should not do that.
I mean, maybe. Okay. Well,
we'll fight them.
Well, maybe make them answer why not, right?
I'm sort of a lawyer. We could.
Okay, then you do whatever you think is appropriate.
We'll see what they say.
Okay.
I'd be willing to bet good money that this is a case of, hey, yeah, we would allow that, but our computer systems don't support it.
Yeah, maybe we should name our business drop table. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Yeah, the SQL query that'll totally, if you don't sanitize your inputs. Yeah. Yeah, little Dalten drop tables.
Good. I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. All right. So hopefully we'll get an update on that soonish. The only other thing I had to kind of go over with folks today was I was thinking about sort of where we're at in the kind of the life cycle of the group, and we're still trying to figure out what it is that we can be like doing like right now, as opposed to sort of still bootstrapping and still getting interest and still seeing what's out there. So one idea that I had was to do something similar to what Talon is doing with grants. So this would be giving out money in order to get some, work done that we wanted to have done, a potential, or even to members themselves. So Phonics is an example of that, where she's working on this sort of thing for free, but potentially if there was some small grant involved with that, it'd make it a little bit easier for her to do that, especially considering she's doing this between her other normal paying gigs. Now, I do know that Talon is somewhat restricted in what they give out, meaning they give out usually stars, and that has a certain threshold, meaning it's about $2,000, $3,000 worth of address space. And so it has to be enough work to meet that standard. And Urbit address space isn't exactly super liquid. And so if you want to do work for it, you have to be willing to hold on to that asset for some period of time. Now, we as a collective could do something maybe slightly different, where we have different kinds of bounties, smaller, and giving out different types of rewards. So not just address space, but cryptocurrency in general or something else. And where I think this might be useful is that there could be other groups outside of Urbit, other chains, other projects that have some extra tokens that they might want to use for these sorts of projects that we could then facilitate those bounties for. Okay, so that's a lot. Let's give an example. So let's say, the project that I used to work on is called Maker, and they have the stable coin called DAI. And maybe Maker wanted to see some sort of development happen inside of Urbit that would be useful to their project. So they would then give us some amount of DAI in order to give out to these projects. And it would be sort of beneficial for them because they get some feature and some recognition outside of their kind of crypto circles and vice versa, something like that. So that's an idea I've got kicking around in terms of what we could do sort of now and sort of in a short term. And this could also be things that we would take for ourselves, meaning we don't necessarily have to find other people to do them, but maybe if we have the expertise ourselves, we could also do that. So just want to throw that out there and see how that lands with folks. Or should we just sort of continue with what we're doing right now?
I would, like I've said, I have this star that's just burning a hole in my pocket that I'd like to give to Dalten so that we could start up with some initial money. And I am okay with us selling it on the market as a star wholesale, though I don't think that's the best return, but it's likely the fastest return. I'm also okay with us parting out the planets. The last time we discussed, we were concerned that, we were thinking that maybe it would be better if we executed that sale through the product that Sarpin was developing. I understand that there were some issues with the design implementation, that the path that was being sought. And so I don't know how long it will take for us to circle back around on that and get that done. And so I'm wondering, maybe we, and I don't mean to criticize them. I'll just not name them, but I've seen some people saying that it's been harder to get a hold of some of the groups out there who are doing that work today, who are selling planets today really actively as a business. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some way we could use profit sharing to get someone to build that for us sooner rather than later on the very basic version of just one planet to one user, no arbitration, and then start bringing in income that we could then also use to get more people to do more things for us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And one thing there that sort of could also be an interesting partnership is maybe we could partner with DOSFeb Industries to do something like this, right? So where we use whatever network we have and partner up with the small computers group, put these things and maybe specialize, instead of cloud hosting, specializing in a small computer hosting that you can have at your own house, but it's always on because it's just in a corner somewhere connected to the internet. And maybe it comes almost completely preloaded with everything you need. and that's sort of like the benefit of doing it that way, as opposed to just like one-click hosting on a DigitalOcean droplet or something like that.
Like batch order a bunch of Raspberry Pis or something.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't imagine they'd be, so they do kind of cost a bit of a premium, right? So the Raspberry Pis I'm thinking of, I think they're like $200 to $300 or somewhere in the middle there before you add any kind of storage, but you don't have to add a lot of storage.
I think it's a little cheaper than that. You can get a 3 for like $100, and I've run an Urbit on a 3.
Did it perform well?
Yeah, it was fine.
Huh? Okay.
I taught a class from it one time, so
so okay, we know it works.
Yeah.
And then I think, was it 2 gigabytes of RAM? Probably.
Yeah, I have it around here somewhere. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
it was 2 gigs.
It's like right on the edge, though, right? Like, well, I mean, that's pretty much the only thing the thing is doing is just running this other computer inside of itself.
Yeah, and you don't need you really don't need 2 gigs of real RAM, so long as it can reserve some swap space on the whatever the little deal you have is.
Yeah.
What do they call those? SD card.
Yeah, pre-configure that, right? You just as you're doing it. So in that sense, we'd have plenty of planets we could use for this. We could get them pretty much all ready to go. The one thing, and I do like the idea, the one thing I thought is always difficult when I get these types of devices is the interface for connecting them to the internet, right? Or, yeah, because if they're not putting out their own Wi-Fi signal that you can connect to with your phone, then it becomes difficult, because then you either need a monitor or some keyboard stuff. Ideally, I think what would be nice is if you could plug it in, just plug it into the power, wait for the Wi-Fi to connect, and then go for it. All right, I think.
Hello.
All right, I think we got LegalZoom. Nice. Hey, Christian.
Hello, I didn't make it last week, and I showed up late this week. My deepest apologies.
Well, just to catch you up, Rapsif is on the phone with LegalZoom right now, figuring out why they haven't approved our name.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and it's not the first time, so it's second time on the call that they've actually called. So hopefully this is going to be it. But also, just to recap we were going to have an update from Phonics. She couldn't make it, so we're going to have something later around the trust metric. But we've been talking about other things we could be doing at the moment to kind of either get revenue, get some traction, all that kind of stuff. And one of the ideas was to partner with DasFab Industries to use some of the planets that Rapsif wants to donate from his star, putting those on some Raspberry Pis and bundling that up as a product in and of itself, as a different thing than hosting like that other people are doing.
Like selling Raspberry Pis?
Basically, yeah. Selling the Raspberry Pi with some small margin, but it also comes pre-configured with the planet. So you buy the planet and the Pi all together. It comes in the mail, and there'd be some, hopefully, easy setup process where the Raspberry Pi is putting out some Wi-Fi that you can connect to it with your phone. It'll have like a user interface to connect the Pi to your local Wi-Fi, and then some way to manage then it should be putting out its own, from there.
That's really interesting, because I was just thinking, like, as long as you could get it connected to your router, then you'd know the IP address.
Oh, you can just plug it in.
Yeah, and you know the port. You know the port. So you just plug it into your router, and we say the port you're going to want to connect to is, whatever your IP address is, whatever.
Yeah,
we could also set up some remote admin.
Yeah, some backdoor stuff. I don't know that we would be able to. They would know the IP address without looking at the router or whatever.
That's what I mean, though. You plug it into your router, you see what new device got connected, and then you're able to get on landscape at least.
Yeah. Yes. But we should assume that they don't know how to connect to their router.
You think?
I mean, yes, because you plan for the lowest possible,
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue there is like I would say maybe like two, maybe three. I don't know. Let me just have my thought out loud. And one would be like, in order to access it remotely, they'd need to be able to like port forward their router,
Yeah, you would.
you know, and then like also like configuring DNS and like then like if they have like a dynamic IP, it would be like a total like pain in the ass.
It's completely a pain because I've done this. It's so hard to do actually. Yeah, and that's not even something I want to try to walk somebody through is port forwarding on your router. Like, not even all of them do it, so it's sort of like
It's hard to explain the concept enough. You know what I mean?
yeah.
We could try to tackle hosting, and then Kenny could just like not provide us any like helpful information whatsoever, and have us figure it out ourselves.
Home hosting.
I mean, like I don't know. I mean, we could go the home hosting route. It seems perilous for these reasons. You know what I mean?
It is, but it's a niche, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have done it. So what was required was, so I logged onto my router and I port forward port 80 to the IP address of which I have statically mapped. So the machine, if it restarts or whatever, doesn't get a new IP address, because otherwise it might from the DCHP, the thing that spits out the IP addresses from the router. So it has a static IP. All port 80 goes to that thing. And then I have on the server itself, there's a client running from no IP that's spitting out updates every 5 minutes about what its IP address is. And then on no IP, which is also a paid service, by the way, that has DNS that maps to some name. And that's how I access it remotely.
So you're not using Azimuth or like the
No.
whatever at azimuth.com. Okay.
No, I've never used Azimuth. I've never used any of the yeah. I've always used my own domain names. But that's the process that you have to go through to get it. Unless there's something that can bundle all that together, but I don't. And I think the no IP, the dynamic IP address problem is the hardest part.
I mean, what you could do is like, I mean, we could like maybe provide our own domain name, and then what we could do is like set up like basically have like low like TTLs, and then just like be able to like have like some cron job that like
spits back an IP.
Yeah, and just automatically updates it.
Yeah. Okay. So we do our own sort of no IP service and map it to our own domain, which I've got one that's really good. It's Urbit Online. So you could map it to that. Yeah, create your own cron job that just pulls the IP address, sends it over. You'd have to map that with whatever ship it is, so you know which which IP address to map it to, which name I should say.
What's the advantage here over just hosting it cloud then?
It's under your control, I guess. Or it's also kind of neat to have a little computer that's my thing.
That's true. I'll buy that.
It's probably more novelty than anything. I guess the actual advantage would be that nobody's has it under their control, except if you want to start providing service, then yeah, it has to be under somebody else's control, or at least somewhat accessible, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to have a robust support structure, which we don't want to get into tech support. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. And you really can't sell products without support.
How well do they? How well does it run on Raspberry Pis? Because I know Raspberry Pis, like the newest ones, are like 1 gigahertz.
I've done it. I think it runs totally serviceably. Like, especially for the applications that are presently available, worked fine.
The thing I know about like hosting is if you use like an encrypted file system, I think you could make it so that like we don't actually have any control over the data. So worst case scenario, we can just like nuke their shit.
So you mean we don't have well, yeah, you could have an encrypted file system, but then we would have access through some other user on the operating system, which doesn't have access to the secret, so we could do basic either monitoring or service without total root access. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Cellular hotspot. Yeah, it's still dynamic in its IP address though.
I mean, yeah, if you do like a 5-minute, half-hour TTL,
Yeah, I've the 5-minute, but here's also the thing, because I have because if you port forward, because of this, I can't remember exactly what the looping thing is. If you try to access the domain that you're self-hosting in your own LAN, it won't resolve. So sometimes I can get it to work if I'm on a VPN, right? But then it goes out through somewhere else and then comes back. I'm not exactly sure why. There might be something I can fiddle with on my router to make that work, but I often forget that I access it through the IP address here in my house and then through a domain name when I'm not there. But I mean, 90% of the time it seems I'm accessing it from within my own network. So I wonder if it'd almost be something like, when like electric cars first came out, you could go like 50 miles, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do physical device in the home, actually, let me show you something. X7. So this is like way high end of the potential scope, but I started buying all the parts to build this, which is it's like a recovery kit for when the world ends, right? And it's a small computer that's self-contained in like a waterproof box.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is it. This makes sense. Hell yeah.
Isn't it cool, man?
That is...
He got military-grade connectors that can be rewired to the GPIO ports of the Raspberry Pi, so you can make whatever connectors you want for it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. All right, I have to show everybody on the video this.
That is pretty badass.
That is pretty badass, yeah.
You should send that to Luke. I think Luke would like that a lot. Here, actually, I'll send it to our DM group.
Okay. All right, so you guys are seeing my screen now. This is what Rapsif posted in the chat, and this is a little Raspberry Pi with a case, full case, some input outputs on the front, a small screen, and a keyboard. This, so I think this makes a lot of sense. This would work really well for a sort of a command line interface, like a Dojo interface for sure. Or even a custom client that's optimized for this sort of like experience where it's almost all text, but maybe some sort of screen switching for different groups that you might be in or some other thing like that. But this is certainly makes sense to me. Like super portable. You have to figure out how to get it online wherever you happen to be, but I'm sure there's a battery that goes with this, right?
I looked into a lot of batteries to pick one that would work with that. But yeah, and the instructions are all on there. His 3D printing models are even available for that specific case, and you can buy those. It's a Pelican case. You can buy them on Amazon. I have a 3D printer. Like the componentry is a little expensive, but we could also tone it down. Like it doesn't need to have a hub necessarily, because the idea there was that you could like store a bunch of Linux distros and have them automatically update and then restore other computers and connect to them over that, but you could just have one input so that as long as you have an Ethernet jack that you can plug into, you can get your Urbit online.
So this, but this Pi has a Wi-Fi. It has Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah, it does. That's right. So you could also get on Wi-Fi. I think you should also have the wired connection, but you don't really need to. On that note, you could just kind of have it work with Wi-Fi.
EMP shielding. Of course. Why not? It's just like a box you can put it in.
Have you seen those new nuclear batteries?
No. What are you talking about?
Dude, they're actually like super badass. So they use like basically like graphene, which has been like radiated into an unstable carbon or isotope, and basically they self-charge, and like they're shielded with diamonds, and so like the like external radiation levels are like, you know, completely safe. And like they're basically batteries that can like last for like, you know, like months to years to decades.
Did you say they're shielded by diamonds?
Yeah, by man-made diamond.
Okay,
And
okay,
like
hopefully a little cheaper
the
than. Yeah.
cost is actually like supposed to be like rather low, maybe even lower than lithium in some cases.
But they run off of the nuclear decay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically what like the rovers on Mars. That's what they have, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that
Submarine.
was like commercially available.
Well, it's a new thing. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay. Well, okay. So Raps, if that makes me think that is the Urbit computer that you could potentially make that's interesting enough that people would actually buy it.
There's one downside to that computer, and that is it's using a 40% keyboard, and so coding in Hoon is an absolute nightmare. Because you have to use all the glyphs, and you don't have. I mean, you got to learn how to type them in.
Huh. Well, if it has a USB port, then you could always plug in a normal print, like a normal keyboard.
That's true.
Or even I mean, if it has input output, so it's just a normal computer, right? All right. Well, that's interesting. And then here's Christian's. This company claims it can use nuclear waste to make batteries that last 28,000 years without charging. Yeah. That would be interesting. But I'm assuming also that nothing is actually in production yet.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I was seeing something that said that they're commercially available, but I'm trying to substantiate that. It's not
I think you
easy.
hear about it. All right. Well, did somebody send this to some group? I can't remember. I thought I heard that while we were chatting.
Yeah, I sent it to Luke and Dan.
Oh, okay. From this group, right?
Yeah. There's this what it is. It just fits like the aesthetic of this other thing that you mentioned.
Well, Rapsif, are you actively trying to put one of these things together?
Yeah, I kind of put it on hold because I just didn't have a ton of time. But yeah, I have all the parts for it.
You do? You like all the parts?
Yeah.
How much, may I ask, are all the parts?
Well, so I bought like an expensive 40% keyboard, and I also bought a 3D printer to be able to print the parts for it. So it depends on how you
Not counting the 3D printer. That one.
The case is like $70, and the Raspberry Pi is maybe 100, and then you just got to find a keyboard that's a reasonable price at a 40%, which is somewhat difficult. The switches and things for the front interface were not terribly expensive, and if you bought them as parts, it would be pretty cheap. Or bought them as a lot of parts, it would be pretty cheap. The backup battery, probably one of the more expensive items. I think that was another $60 to $80, something like that, because it's like a laptop charging backup battery, so it has a lot of work hours.
Okay. Well, certainly a possibility. Okay. Anything else? Did you get through for LegalZoom? Did they get or no?
I am still on hold
Amazing.
with them. Yeah, they called me back to let me sit on hold for 20 minutes. So that's nice.
Okay.
How nice of them.
Yeah. Was there any other new business that either one of you guys wanted to bring up while we're out here?
I
Okay.
think.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and turn off the recording for now, and then yeah, feel free to stick around though.